Frida Kahlo was arguably one of the most influential artists of the 20th century. She was a revolutionary leader born during an important period of Mexican history. She was a feminist, a political activist, and a painter who endured several physical, emotional, and psychological traumas in her lifetime. Yet through her pain, she suffered and created timeless and intimate works of art. As a woman, I personally have always been a fan of Frida Kahlo for being a symbol of strength and hope for a better future. For me, she eloquently connects her identity and her art. Before making this video, I did not know much about the details of her life. But when I looked at her paintings, I felt as if I knew her. Her paintings have touched me and have a place in my heart. I've always associated them with the importance of representation, on being a woman, a person with disabilities, and on being queer in 20th century Mexico. In the Two Fridas, she represents the dichotomy we all feel much too often. The two Fridas are seated almost as a reflection of one another, representing the two sides of the same coin, her Mexican heritage and her European one, who she is inside and who she is to her husband, Diego Rivera, the past and the present, and independence and dependency. A battle within that we're all familiar with, but she doesn't try and erase one. Instead, she gives them both the space to exist within her, embracing both Frida's lives that have brought her to this moment in her life. Frida's path to becoming an artist began from watching her father, an affluent German man who was a professional architectural photographer. He taught her how to take a picture and how to retouch colors, and one of his friends even gave her drawing lessons. She was also influenced by her husband Diego, a celebrated muralist. As she watched him paint, she learned the fundamentals of her craft. And more importantly, she learned how to tell a story in paint. Frida and Diego had a tumultuous relationship. During the course of their lives, they were married twice, divorced once, and separated countless times because of both of their infidelities. They shared a love for Mexicanidad, a movement that celebrated indigenous culture after the revolution. In her life, she wore traditional Tehuana dresses, and in her art, she often drew inspiration from Mexican folk paintings. They were both key members of Mexico's mid-20th century cultural elites. They contributed to this new understanding of Mexicanness that was a part of the socio-political movement taking place in the country. They both wanted a liberated socialist Mexico. They brought together indigenous iconography, popular folk art, and revolutionary political themes in both of their oeuvres. Frida's works are an exploration of identity as seen in her ever-changing self-portraits. She explores themes of life, death, pain, love, fertility, and femininity, and takes us on a journey making us feel what she felt at her most vulnerable moments. Perhaps that's why she's an icon today. Her hold on us comes from her sincerity. In her, we see ourselves. In her paintings, we feel what she has felt. Mexico's art was often focused towards European history and culture. However, the 1910 revolution provided an opportunity for a significant transformation in Mexico's identity. It gave an opportunity for Mexico to reinvent itself and dive deeper into its own culture. That is what we see in the Two Fridas, an artist of both Mexican and European descent. The socio-political climate after the Mexican Revolution sparked up a renewed interest in the art that was being created at the time. Frida's body of work was unlike the government-endorsed murals that came before it. She focused on the intimacies of the individual's experience, as opposed to the nationalist collective artistic choices of her peers. Many of her paintings follow the same format of the ex-votos folk art, painted by artists or everyday people with little or no formal training. They are paintings that tell stories of illness, of recovery, or miracles, and almost always include text recounting the event. They are not copies and so allow the artists to be creative. They are offered to saints or the divine and are placed on the walls of churches and chapels seen most commonly in Mexico and Italy. Frida's love of Mexican folk art was a constant source of inspiration, often producing small-scale paintings with narratives written in. Images of female suffering are a common theme in her paintings. But the message is not of sorrow, but of strength, of resilience. a message that resonated powerfully through post-revolutionary Mexico. Just as Frida's own perseverance in the face of suffering has come to define her as an icon, so too should it define the spirit of Mexican identity if it was to prevail. Two Fridas is one of only 2 large canvases ever painted by Kahlo at 68.3 by 68 inches. It's a double self-portrait done at the time of her divorce from Rivera that was caused by his affair with Frida's sister, Cristina. The Frida on the left is dressed in a European-style Victorian dress, while the one on the right wears a traditional Tijuana attire. The 2 Fridas are joined by their hands and by a single artery, running from one exposed heart to the other. An artery wraps around the Frida on the left, coming down to her lap where she cuts it off with a pair of forceps, the blood dripping onto her white dress. It doesn't appear to be stopping, and she's in danger of bleeding to death. The Frida placed on the right, however, appears to have a healthy heart. The artery wraps around her arm and comes down onto her lap, where she holds a small portrait of Diego Rivera in her hand. Due to the timing of this piece, we can deduce that the pain, suffering, and sadness we see here, and in the stormy sky in the background, reflect Frida's inner turmoil about the divorce. Both figures are seated rather formally, as if they were waiting in the studio to be photographed. Though different, there's a symmetry between them in their body language, facial expressions, and their gaze. The faces are blank, yet the painting conveys deep emotions. This contradiction is one of the reasons Two Fridas is as intriguing today as it was at its conception. Ultimately, the Two Fridas are what makes Frida who she is. Together, the Two Fridas show the physical and emotional toll of the divorce. Despite the struggles and the pain the Frida on the left has gone through, she is still here, bleeding but alive, accepting her pain as a part of her being. Frida sustained a lot of injuries and pain during her lifetime. When she was 6 years old, she developed polio that affected her right leg, which required her to spend 9 months in bed. Despite this, she was still a model student and wanted to become a doctor. On her way to school at the age of 18, she was in a horrific trolley accident that left her bedridden with lifelong pain and chronic problems. She sustained multiple fractures on her clavicle, ribs, spine, elbow, pelvis, leg, and foot, and underwent several surgeries. She was not expected to survive. During her recovery, she returned to her childhood interest in art with the idea of becoming an artist. She recalled, without giving any particular thought, I started painting. She passed away in 1967 at the young age of 42, overshadowed by her husband. The headline of her obituary read, Frida Kahlo, artist, Diego Rivera's wife. Her work was sometimes described as surrealism. She denied that, saying, they thought I was a surrealist, but I wasn't. I never painted dreams, I painted my own reality. In the 1980s, as the feminist movement gained steam, there was a renewed sense of interest in her portrayals of women's mental states seen through her eyes. Her modern attitudes towards sexuality and her courage to explore them within her lifetime while she was alive have solidified her status in the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. Missing from the conversations we have today about Frida Kahlo is a discussion about how the nationalism she promoted in her art and her own personal imagery comes at the expense of the indigenous people of Mexico. Her image today is often of her wearing Tijuana dresses, yet she had no connection to the region and once stated, I've never been to the Tijuana Tepec, nor do I have any connection to the town, but of all Mexican dresses, it's the one I like the most, and that's why I wear it. As art critic Neha Kale explains, Kahlo did not share the lived experience of the Tijuana, the indigenous women whose dresses the artist made central to her paintings and whom she chose for their associations with a matriarchal society. While for Kahlo it was an act of political solidarity, the recontextualization of that gesture puts her dangerously close to cultural appropriation. The years that have followed her death have given rise to many influential ideologies on human rights and representation. Yet at the time, she was often overlooked in a highly male-dominated environment of Mexico, where she had to fight every day to just be who she was, against external societal and political obstacles, and internal psychological and physical struggles. So even though it might be easy for us today to judge the past through the same lens we do the present, it is important to have discussions about both her role and influence on the field of art, feminism, Mexican culture, LGBTQ representation, and on the indigenous communities of Mexico. As a woman and as an artist that gave way to underrepresented communities decades after her death, Frida broke many barriers. She defied society's standards of beauty with a boldness and originality that has made people rethink what it means to be a woman. She was an artist who put herself into her art, the artist and the muse. Not just her face, but also her love for her family, for Diego, her pain from her divorce and her operations, and her conviction as a strong, proud Mexican woman. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested in supporting my work, please give this video a like, subscribe, and click the bell to get notified on all of my new content.